We just got back from the ER and everybody's fine now. And while that wasn't a thrilling experience to be a part of, it was good content for my channel, given that my previous video was on the free healthcare here in Mexico. So now we're going to talk about the paid healthcare here in Mexico. In this video, I'm going to talk about the ER experience, what we paid for that. I have a whole PDF of the bill that I translated to English and into dollars to help it make sense. And also I'm going to walk through the charges we pay to our normal everyday doctors, who aren't in the ER. So let's take a quick look at those things. So here's a recent ER visit bill that we received for our son. I went over here and translated all of the things that are on the bill. I translated it into English. I put the peso amount, which is this amount right here that we were charged, and then I converted it to US dollars at today's rate. So basically, this bill has 2 pages. This is the first page that kind of has the supplies. The next page has the actual cost of the visit. So let's just go through these one by one. We were charged essentially 38 cents for an insulin syringe, which they used to rinse his nose. Actually, it was just the syringe, but it didn't have insulin in it. It was just to put water in his nose. We were charged 40 cents for the cover for the little ear check thing. We were charged $4.81 for the thermometer cover that they took when they took his temperature, which seems a little high to me, but I don't know. We were charged 6 cents for the wooden tongue press. We were charged $1.48 for some gloves. This is classic healthcare billing, right? They bill you for every little thing. But the big hitters here were all the tests they did. They did a strep test for $30, a COVID test for $31, a flu test for $37, and a thorax x-ray for $27. Interesting that the x-ray cost less than the all those tests. So that one was a little surprising to me. So for total for supplies from our recent ER visit, we were charged $133.46. Obviously, being locals, we were charged that in pesos, and that is the locals rate. The second page of the bill, this has a breakdown of the cost of the service they provided. So this says consulta urgencias pediatra. That means like an urgent care pediatric visit. They charged us 1,860 pesos, which translates to $89. So that's the cost of actually visiting the ER and having an on-call pediatrician come and help us. So the total for our ER visit as locals under the local rate was $223. We were there for probably 4 hours. They treated our son. They gave him those tests. They gave him a thorax x-ray. He was having some trouble breathing, so they looked at his lungs. We had kind of an ER doctor come check us out, and then later we had a pediatric doctor come in and consult with us, and she gave us some steroids and things. So ultimately we paid $223, which I feel was very fair. The care was very nice. The room was beautiful. The doctors were very kind. The things felt really organized. So let's look at the cost of doctor visits outside of the ER. So let's say, just in your life, you want to go to see the doctor, or you're going to have a baby, you want to go to an OBGYN, or you want to, get a rash looked at, you're going to go to the dermatologist and whatever. So these are some of the charges that we have actually paid here to specialists and to general doctors. Before we took our son to the ER, we actually took him to a 24-hour general doctor here. Not a pediatrician because they don't have one, but we knew the doctor was there 24 hours. It was kind of late at night, and we just wanted to make sure our son was okay, so we went there. She charged us 600 pesos. The foreigner rate was 1,000 pesos. So the foreigner rate would have been about $500, but because we were residents and Nash is a local, she charged me essentially 29 bucks for that visit. And these visits here are different in America, where the doctor actually spends time with you. When we went to our OBGYN appointments, not to skip ahead here, but for 900 pesos, $43, every single time we went in there, it was us and the doctor. She personally did the ultrasound and looked at the baby and checked the heart rate and listened. And it's just like in America, they have the big screen, you can watch it. It's fun. I would say she probably spent a half hour with us. there was never any rush to get out either. If we needed more conversation time, she would have waited. It wasn't like she was rushing us out the door. We just didn't need anything else. But every single time, she personally did the ultrasound, listened to the baby, checked things out, gave us pictures. It was actually a very nice experience to not feel like they were just rushing to the next appointment like it's like in America. Um, if you go to the dermatologist, it's 1,100 pesos. There was no local rate on that, neither on the OBGYN. So these are the rates that I think you'll just pay if you go, which was $52, which is about in line with a dermatologist in America as your copay. This is just the total, right? There's no insurance involved. We had a pediatric physical therapist slash chiropractor who came to our house to just help with our son because he's been kind of fussy and we couldn't figure it out. And he came to our house for 2 hours and it was $53. To take our son to the regular pediatrician who was there at his birth and who has been very involved, she charges 900 pesos, which is $43. And the way it works is you make an appointment with the doctor themselves or with their secretary. You go there, they have the visit with you, and then usually the doctor themselves just has a credit card terminal, and then they put in the amount and they pay you right there at their desk before you leave. One of the doctors has like a secretary who takes payment and things like that, but it's not like you just leave and you get billed. Like you give them your card in the moment at the end of the visit. So overall, visiting with these people has been a very positive experience for us. They've all taken time to listen to us. We've never felt rushed, and they've all been very knowledgeable and helpful. As I alluded to, we did give birth here. I'm going to make a whole video on this, but just for a quick sneak peek on the pricing of that. You have to pay the hospital their facility fee for the use of essentially the operating room and the rooms, and you get 1 or 2 nights in the hospital and the nursing staff and all that. All of that was 17,000 pesos. Again, that's the locals rate. The foreigner rate's probably closer to 40, which was $818. And then you pay the doctor's salaries directly to the doctors. In our case, our OBGYN had kind of a birth package where she just included everybody that was going to be there. So that was her as the OBGYN, the anesthesiologist, and the pediatrician who were all present at the birth. It was kind of cool for us. All of these doctors were women, which was interesting. So we just paid our OBGYN 21,500 pesos, which was essentially $1,000. And that included the salaries for all three of these professionals who were at the birth. There were also maybe 2 or 3 nurses there, which came out of this hospital fee because they're hospital nurses. So in total, we paid $1,852 to give birth to our son here at the hospital. And it was a good experience for us. And that included a 1-night stay and kind of all the other stuff. So now that you have an idea of how much we pay for things here for good paid private medical services, let me walk you through a bit of that experience, specifically the experience of taking our son to the ER. We noticed over the course of a few days that he was starting to get kind of a ragged breathing, kind of a kind of breathing. And so we had taken him to a general doctor that was a 24-hour doctor just to get their opinion. And we knew that wasn't the best thing, but they were open at the 24-hour clinic to see if there's anything we were missing or anything obvious to them. And the doctor said it's just too early to know, essentially. And so she said just to keep an eye on it. And if it got worse, to either go to the ER or try to get a hold of the pediatrician. We had been in contact with the pediatrician, and she said basically the same thing. Like, yeah, we don't really know yet. You got to see if he either gets better or gets worse or gets a fever. Then we kind of know what's causing it. So he got worse, and so we reached out to the pediatrician, and she said, yeah, at this point, if I were you, I would just go to the ER with him. He's gonna need an X-ray of his lungs to see if it's pneumonia or to see if it's something else, or he's gonna need tests for the flu and COVID and all these things. So I asked her which ER she would recommend, because there's maybe, I don't know, 6 private hospitals here in Playa, and I believe there are 2 public hospitals. She said that the only one here in Playa that has a pediatrician on call on staff all the time in the ER is Hospiten, which is I believe it's a German chain or a Dutch chain that has a few hospitals here in the Riviera Maya. But she said the other ones have an on-call pediatrician, but they have to call them from like Cancun, which is about an hour away. So she suggested to go to Hospital for kind of the best care, in her opinion, and also where she knew they had a pediatrician in the emergency room. So we went over there, and when we got there, we walked in, and it was full of what looked to be tourists, sunburnt people with, a cast in their leg or something. They fell at the resort or they were out snorkeling and they kicked a reef. I don't know, but it kind of looked like a tourist group. And so I walked in and walked to the front of the counter, and the lady says in English, like, "Hi, can I help you? What's going on?" I said, "Hey, yeah, our son is having a hard time breathing. We'd like to have him checked out." So she says, "Okay, yeah, go ahead and give me your passport." And I said, "Okay." It's a very common practice here for hospitals to charge like 10 times the rate that they give to the locals. So, a doctor's visit that might cost me $50 here as a local, they will charge $500 to an American, especially in the ER, right? Because it's the ER. So I'm aware of this, and fortunately, we are residents here, and we have an actual resident card as permanent residents for being here in Mexico. And our son, in this case, who is in the ER, is a Mexican citizen. He was born here. So she asked me for passports. I gave her my passport, my American passport, and I gave her his Mexican passport. And she took it and she looked at them and, put them into the system, whatever they do. And I said to her, I said, "Hey," in my, you know, pretty good Spanish, I said, "Hey, like, I'd like to see a list of the prices, before we begin." Because I wanted to make sure they weren't going to charge me 10 times the price. And she said, "Okay, yeah, I'm going to look for it, whatever. But just so you know, you're getting the locals tariff." She knew what I was asking, right? And so I said, "Okay, yeah, great." So then I knew it would be, reasonable. So, they took a quick look at him, decided he wasn't on his deathbed. So I think we got triaged down a little bit. We ended up waiting maybe an hour, hour and a half. They invited us back. They had a policy where they only invited one person back with um, I want to say the victim, with the child, right? So we walked back into a room, and it was kind of a standard ER setup where, they have kind of a desk, and then on the outside of the desk, there's a bunch of beds with like curtains. So we got to go into one of those that had a bed and like a sink and, the standard medical oxygen things. I don't know. They had a nurse come in and take the vitals and listen to his breathing and look at his oxygen and, all that. I'm just remembering there was kind of like sea turtle, like cartoon sea turtle wallpaper. So I wonder if ours was like a kid specific room, but I don't know. So we sat there, he took the vitals, left. An ER doctor came in and said, "Okay, so what's going on? Blah, blah, blah." And again, I think we were being triaged, right? He wanted to kind of see how grave the situation was. And he said, "Okay, yeah." And he listened to the heart. "Yeah, there's definitely something going on. I'm going to order a x-ray, a thorax x-ray." And, the pediatrician who's on call will be here shortly. So he left. Maybe 10 minutes later, a gentleman came in with a kind of an X-ray machine on wheels. It reminded me of the ones you see in the dentist. They have kind of the crane thing that they wheel in and kind of aim it at your face or whatever. It was kind of like that. They wheeled it into the room, plugged it in, had kind of an arm. They laid our son down on the bed that was in the room. They put they had him lay sort of on a lead mat. I'm assuming it's lead mat. We laid him on top of it. We kind of just held his arms up like this. They took that camera thing down just onto his chest, his lung area. We all kind of stood back and they did push the button, and then he said, "Okay, yeah, great, thanks." And he took the little lead thing back out and like wheeled the machine out of the room, and that was it. Our son didn't even scream, didn't cry. He just laid there. Like, it was so easy. I thought we were gonna have to put him in those hard plastic baby things. I'm like, "Oh, he's gonna hate this," but it was so easy. I loved that we just stayed in the room and they just wheeled the machine into us. So that was a really good experience. During all this, Nash fell asleep. So it was really, really a good experience for us. After a little bit longer, I'm assuming time to get the x-rays back, the pediatrician came in and she kind of asked me what was going on, and I explained to her everything, and she was so wonderful. She just listened and asked, some questions. And again, none of this was rushed. None of this was, she genuinely, I felt like she genuinely cared. And she said, okay, yeah. And I took a look at she said, all the tests came back negative. Sorry, the ER doctor also took tests, the COVID test, the flu test, and a strep test. So by this time, all of those tests had come back as well. So she came in knowing what the test results were, knowing what the x-ray looked like. And then she heard my concerns. And then she said, okay, I took a look at the x-ray. I looked at his tests. They were all negative. He doesn't have the flu. He doesn't have strep. He doesn't have COVID. The x-ray shows that he has inflamed bronchial tubes. I don't see any liquid in the lungs. He doesn't have a fever. I think he just has some bronchitis. And we can give you some steroids. You can give him a nebulizer that'll just shrink those down enough to let them heal. And I think he's going to be good to go. She was so good. The bedside manner was like, when you're in there worried about your baby, she was just so wonderful. I wanted her number to go to her from now on. We like our pediatrician too, right? But she was just so caring. And so she prescribed, some steroids and some pain reliever, if we wanted to help him because he had some teething going on too. And we went back out to the waiting room, and they sort of checked us out of the hospital. They had put a hold on my credit card of 8,000 pesos, which is about $420, prior to doing anything, because that was kind of what they thought would be the max of what they might have to charge me. And then in the end, it ended up being not that grave. And so they refunded me like 3,000 pesos. So I paid about 5,000 pesos or so, which it's about $250, $240, something like that. Like I showed you in that slide. So in the end, we had to go back out, go up to there. They kind of settled the bill with me, ended up giving me a refund, which is a good surprise in the ER. And printed out the doctor's notes and the doctor's prescription and kind of asked me if I had any questions. And they told me where the nearest pharmacy was. And it was just actually a good experience. I went in there kind of wary, like, oh, these guys are going to take advantage of me because I'm an American. And they were just very kind. I think once they saw that we were residents and our son was a Mexican citizen, they just treated us really well. And that's not to say they don't treat foreigners well, just that they would charge probably 10 times the amount that we were charged. So all in all, it was a good experience. And I hoped to explain a little bit of that here because we had a little apprehension going in. So now you know a little bit more about that process. And I also threw in there kind of the cost we pay for our regular rank and file doctors that we talk to. So once again, I hope this video was helpful. I hope it makes you feel more confident if you're visiting or if you're here to stay or if you're thinking about moving to know how the private medical system works here in Mexico. See you in the next video.